True conservatism, deregulating giant financial entities which are driven only by their overpowering greed, then stepping in with bailouts to produce inflation along with a recession, or instead keeping a watchful eye upon those too prone to selfish and childlike excesses, drilling unproductive wilderness and coastline for our tragicomic SUVs, or saving some of that resource for later by buying it from others, even as we scramble all available resources to gain sustainable energy independence. Subsidizing mass production to monocrop our forests and our fields, or carefully tending to the mystic diversity that we owe to the future. Silting up streams and choking off salmon with corporate dams and logging, or minding that watersheds stay clean and intact for future harvests. Encouraging corporations to develop filthy aquaculture mass production, or preserving our clean water and diversity of species for the unknown needs of generations that might even yet be born. Promoting the impersonal short-term stock price-based corporate agriculture agenda, or subsidizing the real stewardship of our precious native soils with the oft-mouthed, constantly trampled values of traditional family farmers. Letting teenagers keep having children because it is a God-given right and abortion is a sin, or licensing would-be parents via stiff examinations, lecturing fourth-generation single mothers on the morality of abstinence, or providing timely family intervention to break this pathetic cycle. Incarcerating without tolerance even ever more criminals raised without hope, teaching them real crime in prison and then setting them free upon our streets, or seeking to identify and correct their problems at very early ages. Funding local governments through cutthroat sales tax competitions over cheap, unplanned, unsustainable retail and housing development, or setting thoughtful long-term policy and implementing it through taxation. Being forced by threat of being viewed as unpatriotically unelectable to condone spending ever more billions on the military to combat a boogeyman who melts away somewhere into dusty, poverty-filled shadows, or investing at home in our own education, environment, agriculture, energy needs, jobs, national debt, and crumbling infrastructure. Insisting that might makes right and that God is on our side, or listening attentively to those considered opinions of our European allies who also happen to descend from our own very forefathers. Electing professional, multi-generational politicians who trade on their names and grow rich from their contacts, or promoting the Jeffersonian ideal of timely and limited services to one's country as a matter of civic duty. Tolerating a putrid mass of strangling tax code spaghetti created by and for parasite lawyers and blood-sucking accountants, or making taxes lucid, reasonable, understandable, and fair. Opening up more of our forests for corporate timber and the obese on ATVs, or diligently looking to preserve what little remains for the future. Enriching puppet so-called royal families in their fly-plagued desert homes, or severing all our relations through alternative energy sources. Paying conglomerates to brew biofuel using up more energy than it makes, or incepting grid-connected solar and wind power on every roof. Allowing coal-burning plants to increase their mountaintop-destroying, mercury-laden, horizon-obscuring, asthma-inducing, cancer-causing emissions, or subsidizing a truly clean coal and fast-breeder thorium reactor development while systematically closing the oldest and dirtiest of the plants. Making government smaller and ever more responsive, or creating the largest bureaucracy ever seen by man under the sacrosanct euphemism known as Homeland Security. Subsidizing corporate agriculture while preaching of free trade, or publicly calling out the bastards who ruined the land with their fossil water mining, sewage lagoons, pesticides, fertilizer, and antibiotic overuse as they weave elaborate tax scams to increase their bonuses. allowing nightmare mega-scale domestic animal concentration camps to pollute the country's water with their foul fecal runoff, or ensuring that food production does not ruin our dwindling water supply. Encouraging our companies to send engineering, research, and information technology positions overseas forever by citing the inevitability of global competition, or realizing that such services are imported straight back here and that any developed nations must provide them for themselves. Letting faceless executives whose only goal is short-term stock prices set policy and retire in side-lock compounds clutching obscene unearned bonuses, or demanding a wisdom and a vision beyond mere grasping business acumen. Smiling as our corporate leaders walk away rich, righteous, and free, leaving us to adjust to the reality of a global standard of poverty, or holding them responsible for the debts they have placed upon our children. Ensuring Americans that their greatest patriotic duty is simply to keep shopping and that hypnotized consumption is a fundamentalist value, or extolling the virtues of thrift and financial independence while setting an example by keeping government spending within reason. Creating the largest government deficit in all of mankind's history, or cutting back thoughtfully during difficult and trying times. Demanding that foreigners buy our probably safe, genetically modified corporate seed, or working closely together to try and end the world's growing hunger. Telling your allies that they are either with you or against you, or striving for consensus and working together towards a shared future. Refusing to sign a global ban on the sick foolishness of chemical warfare, or leading the world in such a worthwhile crusade. Ignoring greenhouse gases and treaties meant to stem their steady growth, or pioneering profitable methods to deal with this global problem. Relaxing pollution standards for the waters of our lakes and streams, or making them safe to swim in for both the fish and for our kids. Deciding that Americans are above the laws of any world court and applying sanctions to others who might be cooperating, or working together on a judicial system which works for the entire planet. Refusing to support the international banning of brutal landmines and continuing their production and export to one and all, or helping farmers and their children to avoid artificial legs and even worse. Withholding funds or for agencies providing birth control education, or giving families in overpopulated lands already full of poverty the ability to choose wisely just for themselves. Turning our national parks over to overpriced corporate property managers, or keeping profit margins far away from the places we have been entrusted to pass on to our future generations. Interpreting world population growth as a threat to our national security, and determining to respond by increasing our own unsustainable numbers, or working to design a rich and sustainable future for a smaller and far less destructive human footprint. Constructing maximally cheap with minimum environmental concern, or building green with the aim of creating structures actually meant to last. Discarding all wrappers, packaging, newspapers, aluminum, and glass, since we paid for them and nobody is paying us not to throw them out, or reusing these things to let our children enjoy them as cheaply as we did. Spreading the lie that economic growth continues at high rates forever and burying generations to come beneath the debt of our tax cuts, or crafting a steady-state model that leaves as much as we enjoy today for those existing beyond the laughably short quarterly horizon we now foresee. Being laid off impersonally by some inhumane organization as a discretionary expense to be reduced merely to increase stock valuation, just to win a sickeningly large annual bonus for one's so-called talents, or cooperatively reducing your salary, maybe working part-time for a while, at a place where you might even envision that there could be a future. touting free market worship while striving to build totalitarian oligopolies, and labeling any criticisms as socialist, unpatriotic, and simply weak, or evolving capitalism to meet the needs of all humanity aboard this one small blue space capsule that we must learn to share. Trying to control fast evolving pests by broadcasting long-lasting poisons on food crops being raised to sell to your mothers and their children, or finding ways to control these long-term problems more safely, cheaply, and sustainably within the unforgiving laws of nature. Encouraging lame urban cowboys to modify their motorcycles and trucks to leave even more noise in their wasteful and infantile wakes, or enforcing simple common sense when the freedom to make empty noise clashes with the right to natural peace and sublime quiet. Allowing big media to set the body politic agenda via slick repetition of stocks, entertainment, sports, and government propaganda, mixed with 24 minutes per hour of higher volume commercials and staged combat debates centered upon vital non-issues, or thoughtfully considering personal and national priorities in reasoned discussion from 1,000 different outlets. Building the same tacky strip mall packages in identical cheap convenience stores setups at every new intersection from border to border at the lowest possible cost, or searching for some kind of vision beyond mere stocks and profits from some wiser group of men than these negligent but rich so-called leaders whose legacy is greedy scheming behind closed boardroom doors. Spinning, staying on message, gaining traction, and shoutingly managing the issues, or publicly learning from mistakes, incorporating other points of view, and seeking involvement in quietly ongoing, open, and non-poisonous debates. Permitting contributory corporations to buy up all the media outlets to serve up the same vapid franchise media in every town and city, or nurturing the plurality in our forgotten motto, E pluribus unum. Praising the virtues of democratic elections while buying them with donations to be paid back with favors, or simply admitting that under our current system, elections are about the money and evolving our institutions to reinstate the ideals of the past. Scornfully belittling science when it conflicts with well-scripted policies already bought and paid for by corporate payoffs, or adopting the scientific method for rationally and fairly dealing with many of our most pressing technical issues. Invoking the lie of local control to grant outside developers unlimited power, permitting them to rend without foresight, planning, or responsibility, or providing coordinated overviews for state, regions, and the nation to ensure a way of life that might even last 1,000 years. Counseling third world countries to preserve their precious ecosystems after having shattered our own and been proven unwilling to restore it, or providing a reality-based example of the benefits of conservation, and then profitably selling related goods and services to the world. Touting the benefits of education while marginalizing scientists and academia quietly through policy and openly in the corporate media, or respecting the educated as our best model for future progress and our most precious current human capital. Searching out the violent and the mindless in pleasure and entertainment, or seeking enlightenment in the precious little free time we are granted before we return to cold ashes and thin dust once again. Expressing your true inner self via clothing, houses, cars, and expensive vacations, or searching for meaning through study and contemplation. Never saving and then demanding that government pay for your retirement, or living within your means and laying out your golden years far ahead. Driving a 300 horsepower four-wheel drive all by yourself an hour to work in a cube every day, or leaving a smaller footprint on the earth and upon your descendants. issuing signing statements and underfunding enforcement agencies, or impartially enforcing our laws per constitutional responsibility. Paying ever more at Tony restaurants until the last trendy seafood species disappears from every ocean, or having the merest shred of common sense to at least leave a viable breeding population intact in the wild, ignoring the anonymous industrial Holocaust-style production of your meat, or consuming with foresight about what goes into your body and having respect for the sacrifice of these other living beings. Eating industrial fast food prepared by low-paid strangers who despise you, or cooking good food and sharing time at home with the people who are always there to love and respect you. Blindly believing in creationism while harshly scoffing at the infidels, or structuring your beliefs within a framework of reason and good faith, sprinkled with a measure of respect for the considered opinions of others, spinning drunkenly from one corporate co-opted fad to another, or cultivating reasoned and explainable values for living, growing fatter and dumber and being a daily target of ridicule, or growing older and wiser and providing valued counsel. Getting Botox, dyeing your hair, wearing heavy makeup and too much gold, or trying to come to terms with the end of your so-called wasted life, spending every evening flipping channels with your stagnating brain disengaged, or facing the onrushing void for a moment with an unblinking third eye.